everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. It's going to be all about Shakespeare. The bard, the OG playwright.
Master of words.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to be looking at excerpts from a text all about his life and work. And by the end, you'll have like a solid understanding, his journey, his major works, why he's still such a big deal.
Yeah.
And we'll do it without getting too bogged down.
Right. Avoiding the weeds.
Yeah. And trust me, there are some seriously interesting details along the way.
Oh, yeah. Some real gems.
For example, did you know Shakespeare never even went to university?
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a theory that he even wrote his own grave inscription.
No, that's dramatic.
Talk about a flair for the dramatic. So, before we get too ahead of ourselves,
Right.
let's start at the beginning. Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon,
Okay.
1564. We don't know exactly when, but we know he was baptized on April 26th.
Interesting. Not quite the rock star entrance you might expect.
Right. Not exactly front-page news.
But that's what makes his rise to fame even more remarkable, right? Yeah. I mean, he wasn't born into royalty or anything. His family wasn't exactly poor, though.
Right. What was his family like?
Well, his dad, John Shakespeare, was a bit of a local mover and shaker. He was a glover and even a town official.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And his mother, Mary Arden, came from a pretty well-off family, landowners.
So not exactly rags to riches, but definitely not a silver spoon situation either. Makes you wonder what kind of kid was Shakespeare.
Right? Was he already writing plays in the back of his school books?
I know. I would love to see those early drafts.
Oh, we can only imagine.
Uh-huh.
But it's pretty likely that young Will attended the King's New School in Stratford.
Okay.
And there he would have studied the classics. Latin literature, works by Roman playwrights like Ovid.
Oh, interesting.
And you can really see those influences throughout his plays.
So hold on. No fancy university degree, but he's dropping classical references like it's nothing.
Exactly. Natural talent.
Talk about natural talent. It makes those lost years everyone talks about even more intriguing. That time between 1585 and 1592 where the historical record just goes silent.
Oh, yeah. It's like Shakespeare just disappeared.
Right. Like, poof, vanished into thin air.
Well, it's a period shrouded in mystery.
Yeah.
Some scholars think he might have been a school teacher.
Okay.
Others say maybe a lawyer's clerk.
Huh.
Some even think he was already involved in theater, performing on stage.
Really? Wow. So he could have been acting before he was writing?
Possibly. We just don't know for sure.
I like to picture him during these lost years as kind of a rogue. Traveling the countryside, soaking up stories, maybe even getting into some trouble.
Right. Getting those life experiences that would fuel his writing.
Exactly. Drawing inspiration from the world around him.
Yeah. Whatever he was up to, by 1592, Shakespeare was in London.
Okay.
And he was making a name for himself as a playwright and an actor.
Wow. So he was a double threat.
He even caught the attention of another playwright, Robert Greene.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of him.
Who in a fit of jealousy called Shakespeare an upstart crow.
Ouch. Sounds like there was some serious drama going down in the Elizabethan theater scene.
You could say that competition was fierce?
So from upstart crow to major player, talk about a glow-up. By 1594, Shakespeare had joined the Lord Chamberlain's Men, one of the most famous acting companies in London.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they had some serious influence. I mean, they later became the King's Men under the patronage of King James I.
Wow. Imagine having the king as your biggest fan.
Talk about a power move.
Right, that's what I call making it big.
Yeah.
And they performed at some pretty legendary venues, too, like the Theater?
Of course.
And, of course, the iconic Globe Theater, which opened in 1599. Can you imagine standing there in the Globe, surrounded by the groundlings, and witnessing one of Shakespeare's plays for the first time?
It must have been an incredible experience.
I can only imagine the energy in the room.
And during this time, Shakespeare was writing hit after hit. Some of his most beloved comedies and histories were born during this period.
Like a Midsummer Night's Dream.
Exactly, with its mischievous fairies and those tangled love affairs.
Oh, and Much Ado About Nothing. Beatrice and Benedict trading witty barbs like it's a sport.
Oh, they are the best.
I know. It's like he invented those classic rom-com tropes we still see today.
Right, but with much better dialogue.
Oh, for sure. Much better dialogue. And let's not forget the histories.
Ah, yes.
Plays like Henry IV and Julius Caesar, exploring the complexities of power, leadership, ambition.
Shakespeare wasn't afraid to tackle those big themes.
No, he wasn't.
And he often presented a more nuanced view of historical figures, even royalty. I mean, imagine the guts it took to write a play that questioned the actions of a king, knowing that the king himself might be in the audience.
Right. That's bold.
Yes.
You don't get to be called the bard by playing it safe.
Definitely not. But it wasn't all plays. Shakespeare was also a master of poetry.
That's right. In 1609, he published a collection of 154 sonnets.
And these aren't your typical love poems?
No, they're not. They're deep. They explore love, beauty, time, mortality, and they pack an emotional punch.
And we can't forget the mystery surrounding the fair youth and the dark lady.
Oh, yes. Who are these mysterious figures?
Right. Their identities remain a puzzle to this day, adding another layer of intrigue to Shakespeare's already fascinating life.
It's like he left us these little breadcrumbs, these glimpses into his heart and mind, and we're still trying to piece together the full story centuries later.
It's a literary treasure hunt.
It makes you wonder, was he writing from personal experience? Were these real people or figments of his imagination?
We may never know for sure, but that's part of what makes exploring Shakespeare's work so captivating.
It really is. And just when you think you've got Shakespeare figured out, he throws you a curveball.
Oh, tell me about it.
In the early 1600s, his work takes a dramatic turn. He starts to explore much darker themes. He delves into the world of tragedy.
The tragedies. This is where we get those iconic plays that have become synonymous with Shakespeare's name: Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, Macbeth.
These are plays that grapple with the darkest aspects of human nature.
Betrayal, revenge, madness, ambition.
I remember reading Macbeth in high school and being totally blown away by the raw emotion, the ambition, the betrayal. It's like Shakespeare climbed inside the minds of his characters and laid bare their deepest desires and fears.
It's powerful stuff.
And then there's King Lear, for me, one of his most gut-wrenching tragedies. This play really digs into family dynamics, loyalty, the consequences of pride and blindness, themes that are just as relevant today as they were back then.
Absolutely. Shakespeare's tragedies explore those universal truths about the human condition.
You know?
The things we all struggle with, regardless of time or place.
Exactly. It's like he's saying, hey, you think you've got problems? Let me introduce you to Hamlet, a guy who's literally haunted by his dead father and can't decide whether to avenge him or not.
Right. And those relatable struggles are what make Shakespeare's plays so enduring. They hold up a mirror to our own lives, force us to confront the same questions about love, loss, ambition, the meaning of it all.
We'll be back in a moment to continue our deep dive, but before we do, I want to hear from you. What about Shakespeare's life or work has stood out to you so far?
It's amazing how Shakespeare can make us feel so deeply for these characters. You know, like Hamlet, this prince grappling with grief and the weight of revenge, or Lady Macbeth consumed by ambition, driven to madness.
It's like he had this X-ray vision right into people's souls. He could see their motivations, their flaws, their desires, and he wasn't afraid to show it all.
And he didn't shy away from complexity either.
Yeah.
His characters weren't just good or bad, hero or villain.
Right.
They were real people wrestling with these impossible choices.
Right.
Like Hamlet, I mean, he's not just some brooding emo kid. He's genuinely trying to figure out what's right. What's just, when it seems like the whole world has gone mad.
Yeah. You know how sometimes you see something online that makes you so angry?
Oh, yeah.
And you're like itching to fire off a response, but then you think, is it even worth it? You know, will this just create more drama?
Right. Pick your battles.
Exactly. And Hamlet's dealing with that on like an epic scale. Avenge his father or risk destroying everything.
And then there's the language, Shakespeare's wordplay. It's just on another level.
It's incredible.
I mean, he invented words, phrases, metaphors that we still use today.
I know. It's like he could see the future of English.
It's mind-boggling.
Okay, so let's dive into some specific plays. Where do we even begin?
Well, Hamlet is always a good starting point. It's arguably his most famous tragedy, and for good reason.
Yeah.
It's a masterpiece of introspection, exploring themes of revenge, betrayal, the very meaning of life itself.
And that famous line, to be or not to be, that is the question.
Oh, yeah.
It's something we've all pondered at some point, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe not about, taking our own lives, but just facing those big existential questions.
It's a line that speaks to the very core of the human condition.
Yeah.
Wrestling with mortality, justice, the purpose of our existence. And Shakespeare doesn't give us easy answers.
Right. He makes us think.
Exactly. He makes us feel.
And the way he builds suspense, it's masterful. The ghost of Hamlet's father, the play within a play, the final duel, it's all so gripping. You can't look away.
And then there's Macbeth, another tragedy that explores the dark side of ambition.
Oh,
Think of someone like a ruthless CEO climbing the corporate ladder, willing to do whatever it takes to get to the top.
okay, I see it.
That's Macbeth.
Yeah.
Only with a crown and a lot more blood.
Right. But it's not just Macbeth who's fascinating. Lady Macbeth is such a powerhouse.
She is.
She's the one pushing him, manipulating him. Almost like she's the mastermind behind the whole thing.
She's ambitious. She's cunning.
Uh-huh.
And ultimately, She cracks under the pressure.
Yeah, that pressure, that ambition can be a heavy burden.
It really can. And their relationship, it's just as captivating as the plot itself.
It's true. It makes you wonder, what's the price of ambition? How far would you go to achieve your goals?
Good question.
Okay, let's talk King Lear. This one always hits me hard. It's a total tearjerker, exploring those messy family relationships. You know, the kind that make you want to call your siblings and just tell them you love them.
Oh, yeah. King Lear. It's a tragedy that gets to the heart of human nature. Lear, this aging king, he makes this colossal mistake.
Oh, what's that?
He divides his kingdom among his daughters based on how much they say they love him.
Oh, no. It's like a
God.
love competition.
Exactly. And it backfires spectacularly.
Oof.
And you can see this play out in families all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
The sibling rivalry, the quest for approval, the parent playing favorites.
Shakespeare was tapping into something universal, something timeless.
He was.
And his two eldest daughters, Goneril and Regan, they're all about the flattery.
Oh.
It's like getting their hands on power.
Right. But Cordelia,
Mm-hmm.
the youngest, the most devoted,
Yeah.
she refuses to play the game.
And she pays the price for it, right?
She does. Lear banishes her, and things just spiral out of control from there.
Wow.
It's a brutal look at how quickly things can fall apart when pride, ego, greed take over.
It's a cautionary tale.
In that storm scene on the heath,
Yeah.
with Lear raging against the elements, it's like a physical manifestation of his inner turmoil.
You can practically feel the wind and the rain, the sense of chaos and despair.
It's visceral.
Okay, we need a little mood shift here.
Right, time for something lighter.
Let's lighten things up with some comedies.
Okay, good idea. Which one?
A Midsummer Night's Dream, always a delight. It's a magical romp through a forest filled with fairies, mistaken identities, and of course, plenty of romance.
Always a classic. It reminds us that Shakespeare wasn't all doom and gloom.
Definitely not. He knew how to make audiences laugh.
Oh, yeah. He knew how to create those moments of pure joy and absurdity.
Right. And Much Ado About Nothing. Another classic. The back and forth between Beatrice and Benedict, it's just brilliant.
One of the best.
They're constantly bickering, teasing, but you can tell there's a spark there, you know? A deep attraction simmering beneath the surface.
It's that classic enemies to lovers trope, right? They're both too proud to admit their feelings.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
their chemistry is undeniable.
It's electric.
I just love that slow burn romance, the way they slowly realize they're perfect for each other.
It's so satisfying.
It's a play that celebrates love, but also explores the complexities of relationships and the importance of communication.
It's got it all.
And we can't forget about Shakespeare's histories. Plays like Richard III, Henry V, the Henry IV plays. They give us this incredible glimpse into the lives of English monarchs.
Their struggles, their triumphs, their very human flaws.
But they're not just dry history lessons.
Oh.
Shakespeare used these plays to explore themes of power, ambition, the burdens of leadership.
It wasn't just retelling history. He was commenting on it, making it relevant to his own time.
Right. And he wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo, even when it came to kings and queens.
It makes you wonder what Queen Elizabeth, I thought, sitting there in the audience watching these plays that questioned the very nature of power.
It's like he was dropping truth bombs on the monarchy disguised as entertainment.
Maybe he was.
And then there are those later plays, often called the romances, like The Tempest and The Winter's Tale.
These plays, written towards the end of Shakespeare's career, tend to be more optimistic, more focused on forgiveness and reconciliation.
It's like after all that tragedy, all that exploring the dark side of humanity, Shakespeare was ready for a little hope, a little redemption.
Maybe so.
The Tempest in particular is often seen as Shakespeare's farewell to the stage.
Oh, interesting.
It's a play that reflects on art creativity, the power of letting go.
Tell me more about it.
Well, the main character, Prospero, he's this exiled duke who uses magic to control everyone on his island. But ultimately, he chooses to forgive those who wronged him.
That's powerful.
And there's this sense of melancholy, a longing for peace that I find really moving.
It's almost as if Shakespeare, through Prospero, was reflecting on his own life, his own career, recognizing the power of storytelling, but also realizing that all stories must come to an end.
Right. All good things.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot here. Tragedies, comedies, histories, even those mysterious sonnets.
We've barely scratched the surface.
But before we move on, I'm curious, what aspect of Shakespeare's work has resonated most with you?
For me, it's the way he can take these huge ideas, these complex ideas, and make them feel so personal, so relatable, like in Othello.
Othello.
Yeah, where it's all driven by jealousy and manipulation. It's like watching a toxic relationship play out in real time. even though it was written centuries ago.
It's true. It's like he's holding up this mirror to human nature, showing us all those messy, complicated bits we try to hide. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier. Those lost years between 1585 and 1592.
Oh, yeah. The mystery
They're
years.
like this giant question mark right smack dab in the middle of his biography, fueling all sorts of speculation.
It's amazing that we have so little information about someone as famous as Shakespeare. What was he doing during those years? Was he secretly honing his writing skills? Or traveling the countryside, collecting stories and inspiration? I guess we'll never know for sure.
It's like a missing puzzle piece that lets our imaginations run wild.
Right. It's exciting.
And speaking of mystery, we can't forget about the sonnets and that whole debate about the identities of the fair youth and the dark lady.
Oh, yes.
Hmm.
Who are these mysterious figures who inspired such passionate and intimate poetry?
Right. Were they real people or just figments of his imagination?
It's a literary puzzle that scholars have been trying to solve for centuries.
And I have a feeling it'll continue to fascinate us for centuries to come.
There's just something alluring about the unknown, isn't there?
There is. It lets us, fill in the blanks, create our own narratives, and I think connect with Shakespeare on a more personal level.
Absolutely.
It's almost as if Shakespeare, even after all these years, is inviting us to play a game of literary hide and seek.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what makes him so endlessly fascinating.
Mhm.
His work is this gift that keeps on giving.
It does.
There's always something new to discover, something new to interpret, something new to appreciate.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. What is it about Shakespeare's work that allows it to transcend time and continue to captivate audiences centuries later? Is it his understanding of human nature, his mastery of language, his ability to make us laugh and cry and feel so deeply?
I think it's all of those things
Mm.
and more. Shakespeare speaks to the very core of what it means to be human. His plays are like a mirror to our own lives, reflecting our joys and sorrows, our hopes and fears, our triumphs and failures.
And in a world that's constantly changing, that's a really powerful and comforting thought. Shakespeare reminds us that even amidst the chaos and uncertainty, there's still beauty and meaning to be found in the human experience.
And that's a legacy we're celebrating.
It is absolutely well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of William Shakespeare. We hope you've enjoyed this journey through the life and works of a true literary titan. We encourage you to explore Shakespeare's work for yourself. You might be surprised at how much he still has to say to us today. Until next time, happy reading.